Well, I'm just about certain that if you had to guess, you would be able to tell me what this video is going to be all about. And this video is going to be all about installing insulation in my garage. So before we could really get started putting this stuff up, I wanted to talk about a few things. One, I decided to go with R19 insulation, which you can see on the front of this package. This stuff is Eco Touch insulation, so this is the pink fiberglass stuff that makes you itch really bad. This is designed for 2x6 walls, and I decided to go with the stuff on rolls because I have a 10-foot gap or span from the top of the concrete wall to the ceiling that I have to cover. So one of these rolls will cover approximately 3 1/4 bays. So the specs on this stuff, right, this is, each one of these rolls is 6.25 inches thick, right, so that's the depth inside the wall, 15 inches wide. So traditional framing is 16 on center, which gives you that 15-inch opening, and it is 39 feet 2 inches long, and it covers 48.96 square feet, so basically 49 square feet. I overestimated by about 10% once I figured out the square footage of my walls, and I think I'll end up taking back 1 or 2 packages, I suspect. When I went down and bought this stuff, I bought it at Home Depot, and after I did all the calculations, it came out that I needed 19.18 bags of insulation. Well, when you buy a large quantity of any building material from Home Depot or Lowe's, usually there is a bulk discount. In this case, the bulk discount per roll was about $7 and some change. So each one of these rolls was $20.09, I believe is what it came out to. Basically, the point is I bought them all at one time, which was about $410 plus tax. And it came out to 20 rolls roughly, and that should be enough to do my entire garage. I've set up these 2 tables to be end to end, and from the end of the table that the camera's on, where you guys are at, to center of this line, which goes into this cutting fixture, is exactly 10 feet. My plan is to take the rolled insulation, set it on the ground, pull a roll out, put it right at the end, and this is screwed down to this table, and that table is clamped to this table, so I should be able to repeatedly cut exactly at 10 feet, which is the distance I need for majority of the pieces inside of my garage. So in the instance of the wires being down low, I'm actually just going to grab this right in the middle, and I'm going to split this open and create a flap, and then tuck that flap down behind the wires and pull it down nice and flush with the bottom of the wall. So that we have good coverage all the way down to the bottom of the wall. Up here, we're actually going to make a cut slightly below. About halfway through. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to pull out a flap. We're going to tuck that down behind that pipe. To save time, because the insulation kind of fills the void and stays in place by itself, I'm actually going to put in 4 or 5 bats, and I'll come back and staple them all at once. Don't skimp on the corners. See this void behind here. So you can see this gap, right? This is the back into the corner. So it is 14 inches from here on the back inside the corner. You can't really see back there because it's shadows, to this edge. So I'm gonna push insulation back in there as neatly as possible, and that way that'll fill up that void nice and tight, and then I'll put this piece in, and these are the 3 pieces I just put up. This piece here is not 14 inches, obviously. It is more like 7.5. So I will go ahead and cut a piece down to 7.5 inches. First time I've used a machete to do that, but it actually worked really well. So I'm glad to see that it came out as well today. I've been making some pretty good progress. I've got the back wall done. I got that done last night, and I've got about 30% of this sidewall over here done. I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces of 8 full-length pieces. So I'm gonna go ahead and get those cut up and get them set out over there. Interior wall insulation is all done. Insulation is up there on my list of things I hate doing. It's up there with sheetrock. Came out really well though. I'm really happy with how it came out. Currently, I'm able to use a couple of small space heaters in this garage, which I have running right now, to keep it warm enough to where it's not a problem for me to really work in here, right? I mean, it is December and it's in the low 30s quite a bit, but the garage is really comfortable to be in, and the insulation is definitely a step I'm glad I took. I wasn't going to do that originally, and I thought I would suffer through it and be fine, but I suffered through last winter without any insulation, and I just wasn't willing to do that this time. So I will be moving on to the wall sheetrock very shortly, now that I have all the insulation up. Takeaways from installing the insulation so far. I hate insulation, however, I watched a few YouTube videos, and the machete, which I'll show you here in a second, worked incredibly well. Really happy with that. The paper-backed insulation, when you're doing it by yourself, definitely comes in really handy. I found that being able to staple it in place just kept everything really neat and tidy, and it was just much more workable. It's a little more expensive, but I find that you pay for convenience sometimes, at least I do, and I found this was definitely the right way to go for me. I did take the time, as you saw, to split insulation and cut it and make flaps to make sure that insulation got down behind like the plumbing piping, the air compressor system piping, and around the wireways to really seal up all the air gaps. I want to try to make this garage as efficient as possible for heating, especially if I end up going with the electric heat. You know, it'll keep the cost down overall in the wintertime. I live in Western Washington, so we don't have brutal cold winters like a lot of folks do, but I still don't want to have a $150, $200 electric bill from heating the shop. I'd rather spend that money on more materials for more projects. So as you saw in the video, I was using this machete to cut insulation, and it seemed really goofy to me at the beginning when I decided to go this route, but I watched a couple of videos on how to cut insulation, and there was one guy that did this with the machete, and he was pretty specific on how he was able to do that. He took a grinder with a flap disc, which is exactly what I did, and he took down the edge, he thinned it out, and then he took a flat file like this and just honed that edge. I found that keeping this flat file on hand, about every 10 cuts, I would just run this over it quickly, and it just sharpened it up and worked significantly better. I'll give you an example here. So it's a nice, super clean cut. It goes all the way through the paper. I did have the sacrificial 2x6, and you can see the cut line in it for how many times I had done that. This was really fast. Having the table set up so I have exactly 10 feet, because that was what most of the bats needed to get cut to, was really a huge time saver for me. If I was only installing 1 or 2 pieces of insulation or doing some touch-up somewhere, I wouldn't go through the hassle of resharpening a machete to I mean, this is like a razor blade. Setting up the tables, marking all the marks out. But in the case where I'm doing an entire garage, especially by myself, being able to have the table with the distance marks for the lengths and being able to cut really fast seemed to be really the best way to go. Really happy with this. Definitely would do this in the future if I end up doing another shop or a house or some kind of large structure. I appreciate you guys watching. I hope you got something out of this video. Maybe the machete, I think, is my biggest takeaway for a large insulation job. Worked really well, really happy with that. I'm glad I saw the YouTube video about the guy using it. Maybe check out some of these other links. I'll have my garage series of videos here, and probably my brother's house build. Definitely hit that subscribe button. It always helps me out in the long run. It helps me move on to the next project. Appreciate you guys watching. Hope you got something out of this.